Alan Watts, our guest. Call's coming up. Alan, of course, you've only covered one tiny area of this, and they just throw it in your face that they knew in the studies over 100 years ago what this would do, and they said, well, put it in the plastics, put it in the liners for the tin cans, put it in everything, and more importantly, they said, let's put fluoride, sodium fluoride in the water, and we have the documents on that, but then they just laugh at us. Please continue, Alan Watt.
Yes, what you have is a multi-pronged attack. When you look at your victim or your enemy in warfare, you must study the enemy, and the enemy are the people. You study them, you find out what their habits are, what do all people go through in stages, etc. How do they rear their young? You can conceive their young. Where can you hit your target? You hit your target in the womb, preferably, if you want to stop major natural changes from occurring. You get in there first, and you cause abnormal changes. We've been under attack from so many areas, including the inoculations. Now, Lord Bertrand Russell, another member of MI5, that is now declassified again, along with Koestler and many other big writers of their time, who led big international meetings, he said himself that they'd also use the needle to make people very placid. Those are his words in one of his books. And they have been using inoculations. They trained the public, who are taught to trust their masters, and they've trained them that everything they pump into your body is for your own good.
Well, it's like your dog. You're lovingly coming over and getting your lap, and the government just injects cyanide in. I mean, it's so sick. Please continue.
Yes, and once again, these inoculations literally have targeted the immune system of people. There's hardly a person in the Western world with an intact immune system. I thought about this years ago when I looked at the fads that the medical sciences have gone through, and they do go through these strange fads. And back in the 50s, at the same time as all this was mandated to go into effect with the food and so on, they also started tonsillectomies and removing adenoids. As a matter of course, with all children in Europe around the age of 4 or 5, it was the done thing to do, and every mother brought in their child, and out they become their adenoids and their tonsils. That's your first line of defense. They are parts of your immune system. They create white blood cells. So once they're removed, you're already missing 30% of them. You're being set up so that ordinary little colds or flus or things which you would normally fight off could actually kill you. And that was the intent of attacking the immune system.
And they did studies in the 40s. They knew that antibiotics were going to create superbacteria. But please continue.
Yes, they did. Yeah. And not only that, what really staggers the mind too, I call this the matrix, because you swallow the world that's been presented to you. And everything in it is pretty well false or a deception or a cover. Now, again, the CBC in Canada did an incredible documentary a few years ago called phagocytes. Now, phagocytes are viruses which are man-made, which can attack and destroy other viruses, any other viruses literally programmed to destroy, or bacterium. And the Russians, the Soviet system, were using them from 1917 onwards, and all through the period up until the 90s, the mid-90s, the West they knew about this, of course, in intelligence agencies. They knew about this in the military-industrial complex. But we were told there's nothing but antibiotics. Meanwhile, children can go into a clinic in Russia with pneumonia. They get a little puffer, inhalants. They have a couple of breaths of this. They go home, and they're cured the following day, because special viruses can be programmed like computers from 1917, and they did not need antibiotics in Russia. Now, a company in New York bought over all of the rights of this particular Georgian company in the ex-Soviet Union, and they've kept it quiet. They're only using it for one thing only, and I don't trust them here. They're using it in all cold-cut meats now. They put these phagocytes viruses on the cold-cut meats, supposedly to kill off other viruses.
That's right. In Latin, it means bacteria eater. And the bigger problem with the cold cuts and the meats that they're spraying with it is it allows them to take rotten meat covered in feces from the slaughterhouse, literally, folks, and not clean it off or not throw it away. They just spray it with virus eaters, viruses that eat bacteria, and then you still have the bacteria dead in the toxins they secrete, their fecal matter, and so you then eat the toxins. Also, the way they're breeding these viruses in these tanks, there's other viruses they're mixing in when they spray it in to the larger preparation. Correct, Alan?
That's right, and now we have outbreaks of listeria on cold meat suddenly. That didn't happen before.
And so their answer is radiate it. But you're still eating the toxin. What gets you really sick is the bacteria excrement. We'll be right back with Alan Watt and your calls. You know, pretty much on the same page with you and your research, because we just go to their own source documents with the chemical dumbing down, the biological attacks, what they're setting up. But I want to go to the calls, and we've been interrupted by a few breaks and my seconding everything you're saying, but you know, I can't help myself. It's also accurate. I want listeners to know this isn't a joke. This is earth-shatteringly important. But encapsulating it, and then I want to go to calls. Again, you're trying to give people the facts, like you always do. I do the same thing. But going from the up close view to the wider view, just in a general gestalt, what their time frame is, what the world's going to look like, what their end game is. Alan Watt from CuttingThroughTheMatrix.com.
Yeah, they want to manage the takedown of society, and at the same time, they want a unified world to come out of it at the very end with the survivors, with a new system, a standardized world system, where they can literally replace all the old types with better genetically enhanced types that will serve the elite better. Now, we know that the elite themselves are not going to dumb themselves down. Charles Galton Darwin was very explicit about that in his writing. So was Arthur Koestler. He said, we, the elite, must retain our survival capabilities because we will be guiding planet Earth, but the rest of the people will not need theirs because the state will be making all the decisions for them. So that's what they want to come out at the very, very end, a placid, compliant, genetically enhanced, more productive species, but a far reduced, more efficient population. And when you tie that in with the Department of Defense's think tank study for NATO, which was echoed by the U.S. military's one, it's they're identical, they see nothing but riots starting around 2010 to 12 to do with food and various other things, necessities really, and escalating for 30 years. Now, that ties in with the timelines that the United Nations has talked about for their new global society with the reduced population. They say in their own documents now there'll be a vastly reduced population by the year 2030, 2035. So we're looking at a long-term business plan that's going to reduce population. During that time, they will be putting big money into genetic enhancing of specific people to serve them better new strains. And at the end, as the old man dies off, they'll bring in the new type. In fact, the old man will be unable to even procreate and reproduce. So they'll bring in the new type, and this will be the reason for bringing in the new type. Well, we've all gone sterile. We have to do it. And no one will complain. No one will object. They'll think it's just a necessity and a strange thing in nature. That's how... See, most people don't think on a conscious level. They're in a state of almost perpetual hypnosis. And this has been done by scientific indoctrination from birth, plus the masses of entertainment they take in. They cannot tell fact from fiction. They have no reasoning abilities. And they do expect, like Brzezinski says, they expect the media to do the reasoning for them. And unfortunately for most folk, that has happened.
And that's why we see all the pre-programming. I mean, the Pentagon back in 2000, as you know, said, we'll use Hollywood, we'll use movies, we'll use security, we'll use the call for Alzheimer's patients. We will use the fad-driven PR, peer pressure system, public relations system, to sell the public on taking microchips.
Yes.
And they talk in all these government white papers and documents. I covered one on Sunday. I think I'm going to play that clip later. Dr. Kaufman talking about it from the document about how most people don't even have their own thoughts, how we're pathetic slaves. I mean, they're really doing this to you. And I just feel so sorry for the yuppies and people who are so arrogant and so into themselves being powerful. They've been trained to laugh at us, and then they wonder why their son, is sterile, or why they are sterile, or why they're so unhappy. or why their wife has breast cancer at 40. And it's all engineered, and they just sit there dying, still loving the lie.